your mouths. I hope me telling everyone to shut their mouths was caught on tape. But yes, so we are talking about new Rasmussen poll commissioned by the Heartland Institute that takes a look at Trump versus Biden, and also some insane findings about people's willingness to support extreme restrictions when it comes to combating COVID, plus new info confirming the lab leak theory on COVID. We're talking about this and more on episode 328 of the In the Tank podcast. That is right. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal, and we have got a full crew today. Joining us, we've got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing great. I saw today on Twitter that Michael Scott was trending, and I'm like, well, I've been on an Office binge lately again, like my 20th binge of The Office, and it's actually not because of Michael Scott. Particularly, it's because of Kamala Harris, because she did an interview on the Today Show this morning, and this is her quote: "It is time for about the administration's COVID strategy. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day, it's time for us to agree that there are things and tools that are available to us to slow this thing down." Vice President Michael Scott, ladies and gentlemen.
I thought she was going to say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Kamala Harris. But also, we have got Chris Talgo, senior editor at the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
Doing good. How are you, Donnie?
Fantastic. You're fresh off an interview. You just got off of it, right? How'd that go?
Went well. Just more COVID craziness.
Yeah,
absolutely. Never ending.
We're gonna dive deep into it, so I'm glad you're brushed up on it. Nate Myers, you are development coordinator at the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing very well.
And weren't expecting it, but we do have a special guest, Justin Haskins, who is calling in through just his phone because he is in Dallas at the Blaze Studios for the release of The Great Reset, Joe Biden and the Rise of 21st Century Fascism. How's it going, Justin?
I'm doing very well. I have this really great guest suite that they put me in, which is
good. It's got bad reception amongst all the other
which has no Wi-Fi.
Well. Yeah, Justin, as you should all know, everyone that's listening to this is the co-author of the new book, the new Glenn Beck book. And as I had mentioned, it was just released, came out on Tuesday. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But if Justin's not available, if he's not able to get through with his connection, maybe we'll just move on to some of the other topics that I had planned out.
Is it working now?
A little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Working. Go ahead. What? Right. What do you have to say? You got a personal fridge. You got your own couch. What?
Yeah, exactly. And a shower.
Oh, my coughing just destroyed his connection again. All right, forget it. Justin, thank you. Tune in next week for Justin. He'll cover more. But
if you're gonna big time us by being in the inner sanctum with Glenn Beck, you could at least have a phone that works. Crying out loud.
So everyone, there is so much stuff that we could have covered this week. Like, it's seriously insane how much is going on. Unfortunately, we limit ourselves to 1 hour once a week, so we had to really pick and choose the topics that we were going to discuss today. So I just wanted to start off with a list of topics that didn't make the cut for this episode. New Quinnipiac poll shows Biden's popularity is continuing to drop down to 33%. A steady decline has been seen over the past several months. Number 2, inflation is the highest it's been in 40 years. It's getting so bad, the Fed is actually signaling that they are going to start raising interest rates soon. A ton of energy stuff. And I teased last week that we were going to dedicate today's episode to energy and climate stuff, but we're going to push that off because of some of the other things that we're going to cover today. But some of these topics include a growing European energy crisis, Germany shutting down half of their nuclear power plants, coal making a comeback because of Biden's backwards fracking regulations. We might get to this. I really doubt it, but Democrats are threatening to change the filibuster rules. And Joe Rogan is becoming the new mainstream media, completely destroying the corporate media. So all of those things, we could have dedicated at least segments of the episode to that, but I just wanted to kind of breeze through some of those. But, gents, I will give you each an opportunity to briefly, very briefly, talk about one of those things if you want. Jim, I'll go to you first.
Oh, well, I saw an article on the Heel. First of all, I got to give you props for informing the audience of everything we're not going to talk about. I think that's a great opener. That's
well,
a great way to put it.
Very briefly mentioning is kind of talking about it.
All right. Yeah. Well, Joe Rogan, I saw a story and I shared it with you this morning, Donnie, from the Hill. And I think something like 75, maybe it was 200 doctors, doesn't matter. Not a whole lot. Signed a letter saying that Spotify, you need to stop letting Joe Rogan talk about COVID because he doesn't know what he's talking about and it's dangerous and people are going to die if you do this, blah, 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 all that stuff. And it has to do with what I think we alluded to this last week, the interview he did with Dr. Robert Malone, who is a virologist, and he has great prestige. And he just thinks that the COVID policies, especially from the beginning, have been wrong and have made people sicker and have helped people to die when they could have been saved. And so we'll see what kind of pressure this will actually have any results, I should say, because my understanding is Joe Rogan's contract with Spotify, and it was $100 million, was that you can't control what I say on my show, period. I do all of the content on my show and you have no input. So, I think it may just be virtue signaling by these, worried, panic porn addicted doctors who sent that letter.
Jim, I just got to throw in, Dr. Malone is not just a virologist. He practically invented mRNA technology. So, if there was any authority on these vaccines, it would be Dr. Malone.
There you go.
That counts as your comment, Nate. Chris, do you have anything to mention about the 5 topics that I briefly covered?
Yeah, I'm going to hit on the economic topic that you mentioned, the 7% inflation rate, which is just killing the American working and middle class. This is coming from a guy, Joe Biden, who said he would not raise taxes 1 penny on everyone and anyone making less than $40,000 per year. Yet last time I checked, 7% inflation rate's a pretty big tax for most Americans. One other thing on this note, the supply chain crisis is just getting worse and worse. I went to the grocery store yesterday. I saw a whole bunch of bare shelves, whole bunch of products that were not available. It's just getting worse, with the inflation, the mandates, the supply chain shortages, the worker shortages. Our economy is in shambles, and Joe Biden is directly responsible for it.
Well, I will say, and I think everyone should keep this in mind always, that inflation is a hidden tax. So even if you're not directly getting a tax raise, it's still basically the case when inflation is out of whack like it is right now. Justin looks like he's trying to tune in again. Maybe he put some tinfoil on the antenna of his phone or something like that. Justin, can you communicate with us? Send some smoke signals. Maybe Elizabeth Warren will be able to interpret them.
No!
Boom!
Wow.
Boom!
That was a great joke and a racist one. So well done. Can you guys hear me all right? First of all?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
I think that obviously the whole COVID thing is proof of the fact that all of the promises that Joe Biden has been making for, years now, that he can solve all of our problems, that he can fix everything, has completely backfired. And now it's obvious that he isn't savior of the universe, that the seas aren't going to part for Joe Biden, that he isn't going to be able to, turn water into wine or cure us just by waving his, crippled hands over the country. So what do we, how is it possible that this guy can wake up every morning and get on television and have press conferences and talk about how he's going to solve the problem when he's obviously not solving the problem? Everyone knows it, and I think it's starting to crush him in his presidency, and his entire agenda is going down with it. And that's the best part of all of this. The arrogance of Joe Biden throughout this whole process, that he could solve all of these problems, that he could fix COVID, is now killing the left's entire agenda. And I don't see any way to turn this around, because COVID isn't going to get better. COVID is here to stay. and things will improve in the death rate, and hopefully COVID will eventually get to the point where it's treated just like the flu or the common cold or something like that. I'm not saying COVID isn't going to get better in that sense, but the idea that COVID is going to be eradicated from the earth because Joe Biden is going to pass some policy to do it is just not going to happen. So no matter what happens, Joe Biden's presidency is going to be viewed as a failure. And that's actually a great thing, because the rest of his agenda was horrible and it's all being dragged down with it. So, I mean, that's going to be the story that dominates the rest of the year. And it's really, I mean, that's the silver lining. If there's any silver lining to COVID continuing to be a problem, it's that the Biden agenda dies with it.
We got a couple of people in the chat asking about Isaac Orr. When's Isaac Orr going to be on the show? We want Isaac. I don't believe any of you guys. I think that that's Isaac just having fake accounts. But like I said, I do plan on doing an energy and climate-centric episode soon. So that's perfectly in Isaac's wheelhouse. Perhaps I'll invite him on. So the most important out of all the things that have been talked about is the fact that Glenn Beck's new book is came out Tuesday. The Great Reset, Joe Biden and the Rise of 21st Century Fascism. As I mentioned earlier, the book is co-authored by Justin Haskins. And if you look on the title page, look, I got the book right here. You show it, right? Here it is. Boom, boom. If you look in the title page, which some say is more prestigious than the cover, you will see that I am listed as a contributor right there. In fact, the font size of my name is just as big as Justin. So keep that in mind. But
I have a meeting with the CEO of the Blaze later to file a formal complaint about that font size. So,
okay, good. So as we've discussed in detail on this podcast and over on Stopping Socialism TV's YouTube channel, the Great Reset might be the most important thing that's going on in the world today. Pretty much everything that we talk about on the show is in some way connected to the Great Reset, whether it's obvious stuff like ESG standards, calls for the Green New Deal, or even government's reaction to COVID and the unlimited money printing. It all plays into the Great Reset. The book went on sale on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, we found out that the first run of the book sold out. In fact, if you go to Amazon.com right now and look for it, it'll say that the book is temporarily out of stock. So I do think that you could go to the bookstore on the corner, if those still exist, and find copies. But yeah, on Amazon, if you order one, it'll say that they'll ship it to you when they get more. I do know that they are planning on doing a second run of these books, but it's just a testament to how this topic has resonated with so many people already. So, Justin, I wasn't planning on going to you because I wasn't thinking you were going to be on the show, but anything that you want to say about the book and everything that goes along with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, the book is off to an incredible start. The word around here in Dallas is that the studios here in Dallas is that it's the most successful book launch of any book that Glenn Beck has ever done in his career. For those of you who don't know what that means exactly, Glenn has had 21 New York Times bestsellers. So this is the most successful book launch he's ever had. And it's, look, it's a great book. That's definitely part of it. But the topic is the key to this whole thing. People know the world around them is dramatically changing. They know that the things that they used to take for granted are no longer the case, that you have authoritarian COVID mandates, you have government spending trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars more than it takes in every year. You've got, you can't go anywhere without wearing a mask. You have vaccine mandates. You have policies that make absolutely no sense. For example, there's now stories coming out, and you may have mentioned this earlier when I wasn't on, but there are stories now coming out that they're requiring some healthcare workers who test positive for COVID to go to work at the hospital, even though they tested positive. So when you turn on the television set, when you listen to the radio, when you listen to your favorite podcast and you hear the things that are going on in the world, you know that something is terribly, terribly wrong. And
Justin, I don't mean to interrupt, but I can confirm that they are requiring healthcare workers to go into work when they test positive. I have several people that I know here in Chicago that work in the healthcare industry, and one of them has specifically told me that the standard right now, even for medical students, is if you test positive, you still have to show up.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you see stories like that and you think to yourself, the world just doesn't make any sense anymore. Why is this happening? And the truth is, I believe that much of what's going on, and this is what the Great Reset book is all about, much of what's going on in the world is they're not isolated, strange events. There is a reason for it. And that reason is there is this movement called the Great Reset that is designed to consolidate wealth and power in the hands of the elites and to transform our society and rewrite the social contract. Those are the kinds of things that these people are saying. That is not something that I'm making up. And that movement is reshaping the world in ways that 10, 15 years ago seemed virtually impossible. And I think that idea, that concept, people want to learn more about it. They want to understand why the world is changing, and they want to know what they can do to stop it. And that's what this Great Reset book provides. So I think that's why people are so interested in it. I think that's why the book is selling so well. And I think it's going to continue, because when people realize that there actually are answers to some of these questions, I think they're going to be hungry to get those answers and to find out what they can do to try to get their country back.
Yeah, it's one of these things that it's such an important topic, and a lot of the stuff that we are covering or planning on covering in the future, like, uses this as a foundation. So it's like, if you want to stay up to date on all the stuff that we're going to continue to talk about on podcasts like this, or Stopping Socialism TV, or anything like that, it's like you kind of need this as like a cornerstone, so that you know where all of this is going, and staying on top of everything as it comes down the pike. So you kind of have to buy this book, people. Jim Lakely, considering, that Justin and I had a hand in creating this book, you surely pre-ordered a copy for your own personal use, correct?
I thought you guys were going to give me a free book signed by you.
How dare you?
Actually,
kick him off the podcast.
Donnie, I was actually looking forward to you just reading the book to me. You come over to my house and you read a chapter to me every night as I go to sleep.
Funny enough, there is no audiobook recording yet, and I keep telling Justin to throw my name in there when he has these meetings with the CEOs of the Blaze, and he responds just like that by chuckling, and I have to remind him that I'm not joking. I will totally do it. So
Donnie wants to come over to every American's house and read the book. Donnie wants to read the whole book to America. That's right. What Donnie wants.
That'll be my job for the next 45 years. All right, cool. Very cool. Well, I will say that because of the comments that I see here, asking for Isaac, I did put out a text to him saying, "Hey, Isaac, if we do an energy-centric episode next week, will you be on? The audience wants to know." So I will keep you posted when I get his response, which surely will happen within the rest of the remaining podcast. But that just goes to show that the people that are watching live on Thursdays, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, can alter the show by sending us your comments and questions, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to entice all of those that just listen to the audio only that comes out on Fridays to tune into the live show and be a part of the show. All right, Justin, well, anything else you want to say about the Great Reset? Are you going to hang on for the remainder of the show, or you got some stuff to do? I'm giving you an out if you want to jump ship.
I'll hang with you guys. Are we moving from the Great Reset though? Because I did have one thing that I want to talk about with the Great Reset if we're moving on from it.
We are going to move on, but I'll give you, final word on it.
So one thing that I did find, this was a story that just came out earlier this week, and it's especially relevant for the Heartland Institute and for the people who watch this podcast. A lot of them are very interested in this topic. So I thought that I would mention it before, because there's no way I'm going to remember this next week. As you know, I always forget everything. But there was this report that came out from the World Economic Forum highlighting it's called the Global Risks Report, and they put it out every year. It just came out earlier this week, the updated version. And in this Global Risks Report, this is the World Economic Forum telling the world what they think the most important problems are for the world. And not just in the near term, but they break it down by, I think it's 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, and 5 to 10 years. And so I like to use this report as a way to look at what elites are thinking in terms of messaging and what they see as being the biggest opportunities for them to try to enact change going forward into the future. Because when they highlight problems, that's their way of kind of trying to direct the conversation in that area so that they can enact the policies that they want to enact, right? So in the 5 to 10 year category, I mean, I'm not going to go over the whole report, but in the 5 to 10 year category, so this is what they consider to be the long-term problems facing the world. When they asked these people, because this was based on a survey that they conducted of people, sort of global leaders, the top 5 things were climate action failure was number 1, extreme weather was number 2, biodiversity loss was number 3, natural resource crises was number 4, human environmental damage was number 5. You have to get to number 6 on the list before you find something that isn't related directly to climate change or environmentalism.
Right.
So why does that matter? It matters because in the long term, what do elites believe they're going to be able to use as their justification for transforming society? It is climate change and far left-wing environmentalism. That is the plan. And they couldn't make it clearer. They literally publish a report where they say, these are the things that we think are the big threats in the long run. And so it is so important that we counteract these things now. We don't wait for them to become the next COVID, that we counteract it, that we're always counteracting it. And that's, a huge part of, it's not the only thing the Heartland Institute does, but that's a huge part of what Heartland does. And so when I saw that report and I saw those results, I thought, wow, that is just absolute, that is ironclad proof of how important it is for us to constantly be counteracting that narrative.
Yeah.
So
I've been saying
I just
for a
wanted
while,
to bring that up before we moved on.
I think, the authoritarian stuff that they've been pushing for COVID is basically just a battering ram to take down the door so they could do the same stuff with climate change, because that is surely their longer term justification for all the crap that they've been trying to pull here. But
you're exactly right. This is the way that they condition everybody to get used to that sort of authoritarianism and government insertion into their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Isaac is responding to me, but he won't give me a straight answer. So I'll get back to that. But we should get out of topics at hand because we're already a third of the way through the podcast. So let's get to the polls. This is another thing that's been keeping us busy, keeping Justin, keeping me, keeping Chris, the rest of the team busy, is that we finally got our results back from a poll that we commissioned through Rasmussen. So I think this is like the 4th poll that we've done, maybe the 5th. That we've commissioned in the past couple of years. And this time we wanted to revisit a concept that we explored in the first poll that we ever did, which was the exploration of authoritarianism, authoritarian tendencies among likely voters and how it shakes out when you compare people's political leanings. So we wanted to focus on COVID restrictions this time, but we wanted to push it really far. We wanted to push it really, really far. So in addition to asking whether or not people support, Biden's vaccine mandate, we also asked about their support of some really extreme stuff. And I'll tell you, some of the results are pretty shocking, but I'll leave that as a tease for now. And we'll just dive into our first set of results, which had to focus on the popularity of Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So just some top line findings before we get into some of our commentary here. And you can find, all of the stuff, the full details, whatever, if you go to the link in the show notes and click on the full results tab there. Anyways, among likely voters, 46% had a very or somewhat favorable impression of Joe Biden. Compare that to 52% that had a very or somewhat, 51% that had a somewhat favorable impression of Donald Trump. One thing that was interesting is if you looked at independents here, only 35% of independents had a favorable impression of Biden, whereas 49% of independents had a favorable impression of Donald Trump. We asked if the next U.S. presidential election were held today and Joe Biden was running against Donald Trump, who would you be most likely to vote for? 40% said Joe Biden, compared to 46% who said Donald Trump. And independence for Biden in that question was 29%, and compared to Trump's, which was 45%. So, Jim, I'm going to go to you first. What were your thoughts when you saw these findings?
Well, not surprising. It wasn't surprising at all. I mean, even George W. Bush, who was reviled by the press and every Democrat alive, he saw his reputation being rehabilitated, and people tended to look upon him with more kind eyes in retrospect. But actually, to see it happen for Trump, I mean, we're only a year away from what was considered a presidency that was a very threat to the republic, and now, if he was to go head to head against Joe Biden, he would win, and that's because Joe Biden is one of the worst presidents in American history after only 1 year. So I think the fact, and Justin had pointed this out as we were going over these results this week, is how the independents have broken away, back toward Trump, right? That's what got Joe Biden into the White House in the first place, was that Trump did. He lost independents who were not very keen on Hillary Clinton either. So, they swing back and forth, and they're going to be swinging very hard away from Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in this coming midterm election here in 2022.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, Jim says it's not surprising. It might be a little bit surprising considering the 24/7, 365 dedicated to the storyline that Donald Trump tried to overthrow our democracy. What are your thoughts, Chris?
My thoughts is that President Biden ran on a moderate agenda. He said that he would be a uniter, and literally since the first day he's been in the Oval Office, he's done the exact opposite. And I think that people are finally starting to become aware of this. And I also think that 1 year out from the Donald Trump presidency, the fact that he's been off of Twitter for a year now, people are starting to look back and say, yeah, he did a lot of bombastic tweets, and yeah, his personality wasn't the greatest, but before the pandemic hit, actually life was pretty good under Trump. We had a thriving economy. The world was safe. Our trade deals were being renegotiated. The border was being secured. And in less than 1 year, Joe Biden has taken all of those accomplishments and just thrown them by the wayside. So I think that people see it. They see it in their everyday lives. And despite the fact that the media is unwilling to describe what's going on, people feel it. They know it.
Nate Myers, I really want to get to some of the juicy findings in regards to COVID and authoritarianism, but if you have any thoughts on this, I'll put the floor to you.
Yeah, just a real quick thought. I think by and large independents vote not really according to what they see in the news, but what affects their lives. They're not really political creatures. They care about their families, they care about their friends, and work and leisure. And I think when a lot of independents compare their lives now to 2 years ago or even a year ago when Trump was in office, and I'm by no means a Trump supporter or a fan of Trump, but when they compare their lives from now to 2 or just a year ago, there's a drastic difference, and they can tell the difference, and they realize that a lot of that is tied to which regime was in power and which regime is in power now. I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, no doubt. Is Justin still here? Do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I mean the COVID questions are definitely the most interesting part of all of this. So I would rather get to that than talk too much about this. But I will say that the independents, it's going to be extremely difficult for Biden to overcome that. When you have approval rating of 35% with independents, that is very, very, very bad and incredibly difficult to overcome. So I don't see Joe Biden being able to pull that off, frankly.
Yeah. Well, when you see the polls just steadily dropping and dropping and dropping for him, I don't know what their plan is.
Donnie, just one more very quick thing on this. The latest rumor is that Hillary Clinton will be reappearing in 2024. That. So it looks like we could have a 2016 rematch here.
If you say her name 3 times into the mirror, she shows up. I don't know if you knew that.
I told you guys, you kept poo-pooing it. I've been telling you for a long time. Hillary's coming back, baby.
I'll double down on it. I don't think it's going to happen. You know what? I came up with a theory earlier today. I think this is just trying to lay like the groundwork for the end of her career, where it's like, oh, she could have come back if she wanted to. Her political career could have gone further than getting destroyed by Donald Trump in the election of
Never underestimate the power of Hillary Clinton to seek power.
Yeah, I will say this. I think the prospect of her going through a contested nomination process is actually not super high. I think the party would be so desperate they'd figure out some way to just make it happen, right? She wouldn't even. I mean, hell, she didn't want to campaign in Wisconsin. That's why she isn't president in the first place. If you think she's going to be crisscrossing the country, going to fundraisers and campaigning again, I have my doubts. That doesn't mean she doesn't want to be president and can't figure out another way.
Yeah, I don't know.
I find the timing of that article release to be too convenient. Right as the DARPA documents get released, hey, everybody, look, Hillary Clinton's running again. I think it's just a bunch of noise.
Do you guys remember when the last time that she ran for president, she remember that incident where she stumbled out of that car and she
that's right.
barely pulled herself back? That was
she passed out outside of the 9/11 memorial, and her security had to toss her into the back of the
that was 5 years ago.
Like a cadaver, they're throwing into the back of the hearse.
Yeah. I mean, that was 5 years ago. She ain't getting any younger or healthier. I don't know. I'm having a hard time seeing how she's going to be able to go to Iowa and be sucking down corn dogs.
This is
kissing babies.
But compared to Joe Biden, she's the candidate of youth and vigor. I mean,
compared to him. I'm telling you, it's just the final chapter of her autobiography could be like, and everyone wanted me to run again, but I didn't. Instead of I got destroyed by Donald Trump in 2016. I'm telling you, that's what it is. Everyone breathe easy. She's not going to run again. Although maybe we should have a Hillary watch segment of this podcast every time one of these updates come on. Do you know it's 10 o'clock? Do you know where Hillary is? Something like that. All right, let's get to the juicy stuff. Oh, wait. Speaking of juicy, our producer extraordinaire found a video of Hillary's security tossing her into the back of a truck like a slab of meat.
Please play this. I want to see this again.
Here we go.
No, that's her leaning up against a pole, and they're opening the door. Security knows that they have to get in place to block the cameras because she can't walk on her own at this point.
Oh, boy.
It's her walking like she's had a few. Falling down. Security getting into position. Throw her in there. I think she left her shoe behind, too, so it was like a Cinderella thing.
Oh, my God.
All right.
Turn into a pumpkin.
All right, enough of that. Let's get to the COVID poll. This is really
COVID poll. So, like I said, we wanted to push the authoritarianism really far just to see how many people would agree to some of these proposals. So I'm just going to laundry list read through these. If anyone wants to interject, have at it. But I'm just going to go through these, unless you guys jump in. So also what I'm reading is just a comparison of the party affiliation. So I'm just going to give the results for the Republican respondents and the Democrat respondents. And also this is a combination of the strongly favoring and somewhat favoring. So I'm just, for the sake of time, combining those two things. So first question, do you favor Biden's plan to impose a vaccine mandate on employees of large companies and government agencies? Republicans, 22%, Democrats, 78%. So these are going to slowly ramp up in craziness here. Question 2, do you favor a proposal for federal state governments to fine Americans who choose not to get a vaccine? Republicans, 19%, Democrats, 55%. So over half of Democrats want to fine Americans who choose not to get a vaccine, according to this poll. Question 3, do you favor a proposal to require citizens remain confined to their homes except for in case of emergencies if they refuse to get a vaccine? Republicans, 17%. Democrats, 59%, well over half of Democrats. Question 4? Do you favor proposal to require citizens temporarily live in designated facilities if they refuse to get a vaccine? Only 14% of Republicans, 45% of Democrats. A little shade under 50% of Democrats basically want to put you in some type of
government facilities camp. Was a bridge too far for that 54%. Confining me to my home, let's have it. But government facilities, anyways. Sorry.
Question 5. Do you support government fining or imprisoning people who publicly question the efficacy of existing COVID vaccines on social media, television, radio, etc., etc.? So if you question the efficacy of these vaccines, should you be fined or imprisoned is the question. 14% of Republicans. I don't understand, you guys. You should come talk to me.
Who is this 14%?
I know, it's like the margin of error. I don't know. 48% of Democrats, nearly 50% of Democrats advocating you being fined or imprisoned for merely questioning the efficacy of vaccine in public. Is that just like a disgusting finding? It gets worse. Question 6. Do you support a proposal to mandate unvaccinated citizens use a smartphone app or a wearable device that tracks and ensures unvaccinated people are quarantining? 13% of Republicans, 47% of Democrats, 47%. And probably my favorite question, the most extreme, do you support a proposal to temporarily remove children from their parents' custody if the parents refuse to get a vaccine? 7% of Republicans said yes to that. 29% of Democrats want to take people's kids away if they choose not to get a vaccine. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on all of this, but I gave a couple of friends a sneak peek of some of the results when we first got them in, and their response was basically, "I want to throw up." So Jim, what's your response?
Yeah, I mean, I was putting this release together yesterday for us, and so I had to dig down into all the crosstabs, and I was just as shocked as you were. I mean, the idea that more than a quarter, and almost between a quarter and a third of Democrats want to take your kids away if you don't have the vaccine. I mean, there are many good reasons to not have the vaccine. Some of them, doctors will tell their patients, it's just not good for you. This is not a good choice for you. It's better for you to find other ways to be safe. Almost a third of Democrats say, I don't care, or I'm taking your kids away until you get the jab. We are living through a mass psychosis. What is that term that Dr. Robert Malone had said before? Mass something psychosis. But this
mass formation psychosis.
Mass formation psychosis. This country has gone, half of this country has gone completely insane. Completely insane. Fining you or putting you in jail for saying that I don't think these vaccines work very well. Because guess what? They don't work really well. People that have the vaccine, and we were promised that people who get the vaccine, Joe Biden said this himself several times, get the jab so you don't get the COVID, so you can go enjoy Christmas and Thanksgiving and hug grandma again. But people that have the vaccine are getting Omicron. They were actually getting Delta as well. So a strong majority of Democrats think that just saying the truth should put you in jail. You sometimes wonder if we even live in America anymore. And I actually increasingly think we don't live in America anymore. We certainly don't live in the America that I grew up in, and that I thought, I basically spent my entire professional career fighting to protect, and that is protect the Constitution, which gives us these rights, which would make it illegal. It's not constitutional to lock people up because they disagree with you. Yet majorities of Democrats think this is cool. Joe Biden was elected as some kind of moderate. His entire party are radical nut jobs who have totalitarian tendencies, and COVID is just exposing it.
Yeah, I am now one of these people that have kids, and they thought that 29% of Democrats want to take my kid away because of my choice not to get a vaccine is just purely disgusting to me. I don't even know how to react to that. Like, it's just, it's absolutely insane.
I know how to react to it, but I'm not allowed to say it on YouTube.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. Chris, thoughts after I read all of those findings? What sticks out to you?
I think Jim really hit the nail on the head here. You've got almost half the population who just are in a alternate reality, and they think that COVID-19 is the bubonic plague 2.0. From the beginning, I think this was all politicized. I think it was all done to try to win the 2020 election for Joe Biden and company. And unfortunately, they've succeeded with the help of the media and with the help of the deep state and Dr. Fauci and all the healthcare officials who have just gone along with this, even though they know so much better. The good news is it's 2 years and a little bit of change later. And once again, just like with the economy, the American people, they see what's going on. They are starting to realize what's going on. And in my everyday experiences, I see less and less people obeying the rules. More and more people are flouting the rules. And it seems to me like more and more people want a return to pre-pandemic America. And I am definitely in that camp.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the results of this, if we ask the same questions over the course of the pandemic? Like, would people have been even more authoritarian in the first 12 months of this, the first 6 months of this, and they've gotten less and less so? Is it the inverse, and people are actually more susceptible to buying into all these authoritarian proposals? I'm not sure. Nate, what are your thoughts on some of these polls as I read them?
Well, to do a little bit of self-censoring, I would say that it gives me like Red Dawn vibes. To be honest, if they continue down this route, that is likely the future that we will face, because I don't see the gap between these two camps getting closer together. I mean, if half of Democrats are saying that they want to take, or I'm sorry, not half, but 30% of Democrats want to take your kids away because you're not vaccinated, what does that look like if that's actually enacted? You know?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no kidding. Justin, are you there? You seem to be cutting in and out. Are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm actually not cutting in and out. I just keep pushing the wrong button. It throws me out. So, yeah, I mean, look, these polling results, I think, are absolutely shocking. I mean, when you and I put that poll together, Donnie, we thought, I don't think we really knew what to expect. We knew there'd be a sizable difference between it. And I think we thought Democrats would be more authoritarian. I don't think that's really a shocker. But to say half, want to confine you to your home, roughly half want to make you wear a trackable device,
right.
Half want to silence and imprison people or fine people who even question the efficacy of vaccines.
Question it.
Yeah, I mean, you could actually be vaccinated and just question it online, whether it's effective or not, or how effective it is. And you could be fined or imprisoned for that. Half of Democrats believe that. I mean, as Nate was just saying, I mean, how does this divide is so serious and it is so stark. How do we possibly move on from that? I truly don't know how we can come together. The only plan of action that I can think of, which Democrats don't support, is, you know what? If you want to live in a place where they have these kinds of policies, fine. Like, live in California, live in New York. Let's let them have these crazy policies. And if you don't want to have these policies, live someplace else where they don't have those things, right?
Sure.
But do Democrats support that, or do they support making everyone everywhere follow their rules? That seems to be their standard approach to just about everything these days. So how can we possibly come together if you have half the country saying we're going to put people in jail for saying something on Twitter, and the other half of the country saying, like, this is absolutely insanity. You people are tyrants. I don't know. I don't know how we survive this in the long run if we continue to make every issue a big national issue.
Well, let me just ask you this, Justin, because you and I wrote this poll, right? We had like a afternoon where we're just brainstorming up questions, and when we figured out, like, okay, let's do it this way. Let's do increasingly authoritarian things and just see what people will actually agree to. And we seriously like brainstormed to come up with just the craziest proposals, and some of them based in reality, other ones not so much. I mean, I hope that the taking kids away one is just purely fantasy. I'm not entirely sure what's being enacted in other countries. But when we were coming up with these, were you expecting the numbers like at all within the ballpark? I didn't. I thought for sure that one, the taking kids away from people that didn't get the vaccine, I thought that there's no way that any demographic was going to be north of 10%.
Yeah, I thought some of them would be maybe a quarter, maybe 20%. The taking kids away, I thought that'd be 10% max. But the other ones, I even thought 25%, 30% maybe. I did not think half of Democrats held that position. I really did.
Well, yeah. If you look at the crosstabs, in fact, if you go to heartland.org, you'll see the press release we have on there, and we broken down. We pulled out some interesting little tidbits in the crosstabs, and what I found really surprising, and maybe you guys who are younger than me can can weigh in on why this is, but so for the question on imprisoning individuals who publicly question the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines on social media, television, etc. Younger voters between the ages of 18 and 40 were the most likely of any of the age demographics to support imprisoning those who express doubts about the effectiveness of the COVID vaccines. On another question on using a smartphone or an app to be tracked by the government if you had not had the vaccine and to make sure you're socially distancing. More than half of younger voters, 53%, supported using tracking apps. Now I understand that they were born into this technology, but that's pretty troubling to me. And then the one that you guys thought there's no way anybody would say yes to this question, they're taking the kids away. The largest age demographic of those in support of the government removing your kids if you don't have the vaccine was the voters between the ages of 18 and 40. 31% of that voting demographic said that that's cool. What the hell? This is why I wonder if we're living in America anymore, and we certainly are not going to live. If I live to be 100, I'm never going to recognize this country.
Well, I got to jump in here real quick. I just wanted to say this. I think this points to a larger trend in Western society in general, because I mean, just compare Australia to the United States. The only thing that separates us is federalism. Australia doesn't have nearly the same system of governance as far as individual states and provinces being able to rule themselves semi-independently. And that's really the only thing that has saved the U.S. from turning into Australia. I mean, as far as culture goes, we're almost identical to Australia in many ways. But you look at Australia and they're confining the unvaccinated to their homes. They're putting the unvaccinated in jails and government facilities. All the things that half of Democrats are calling for currently, they are doing in Australia. And the only thing that has prevented that so far is federalism. But, individual states being able to determine how they want to approach the pandemic. And I think the pandemic at large really highlights the importance of a federal system and in having a republic, because that is what prevents, even more tyranny than we are already experiencing currently.
Yeah, like I said, this is a Rasmussen poll that was commissioned by the Heartland Institute. So Rasmussen is obviously very established in doing stuff like this. Once we supply them with the questions, they give us some edits back to how they think that the questions should be worded to avoid confusion and all of that stuff. And then that's basically the last time we get to touch any of this until we get the results back. So and also Rasmussen releases all of the results, regardless if it falls in line with what our theory is going to be, whatever our hypothesis is going to be. So even if the results came back and it was completely opposite of what we were expecting to find, it would still be published and out there. So it's this, I just want to point that out, that this isn't just like, we didn't send Andy around with a clipboard around the streets of Arlington Heights asking people these questions. This was done by a very buttoned up organization. So just to dispel any accusations that this is somehow, not a legit poll. I just wanted to mention that stuff there.
Well, Donnie, some of the most shocking results from the poll, the people who say that you should have your children taken away from you if you don't get vaccinated, or you should go to a COVID concentration camp. I think that is a result of the dehumanization that has occurred over the past 2 years concerning anyone who at first questioned the lethality of this virus, and then also those who did not automatically decide that they were going to fall in line with every single arbitrary rule, whether it be wearing your mask outside or showing your papers now to get into a gym in the city of Chicago. For some reason, those people have been just pilloried by the press and by so many politicians, especially in the past year, where now almost half the population just views them as those people don't care about others. Those people actually want to hurt others, when that is just completely not true.
Yeah. I just wonder if there's even more extreme questions that we could have asked.
Well, it's a shame that Justin is again falling off. I guess he hit the wrong button again. So he's probably not one of those guys, even though I think he is in that 18 to 49 or 18 to 40 demographic. There he is. He's back. He keeps hitting the wrong button, even though he's a younger person. He can't operate his phone and stay on the damn podcast. But Justin, I mean, it's the idea of younger people being in favor of some of the most draconian scenarios that we put forth in this poll. I don't know if I was supposed to be surprised by that, but I was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I was incredibly surprised by that. I think that we've been building for the last couple of decades. We've built an educational system that is teaching kids to be cogs in a machine. and not teaching kids to be independent thinkers. And in fact, we're teaching children, we're punishing people who think independently, who act independently. The whole culture of the modern school system is not designed for you to question authority. It's designed for you to fall in line with whatever the authorities tell you.
You're exactly
and
right.
Is it really shocking then that half the people that come out of that system think the way they do?
Not only that, but the social media that's so powerful and all that. We talked about how slanted it is for a billion episodes of this show. Those are just echo chambers for all of this type of rhetoric. This idea that me not getting a vaccine is killing grandma in New York or something like that. So it's just like, and who uses social media more than anybody else? It's that specific demographic. So there's multiple factors that are causing the outcome to skew in that direction, unfortunately.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, you got to remember too, most young people are Democrats, and so most Democrats support these policies. Most young people are Democrats. I mean, it's all kind of intermingled with that. There were actually questions where Democrats overall is still, I think, a stronger indicator of how you would answer these authoritarian questions than even being a young person. So it's and in fact, if I remember right, Donnie, I think we talked about this before. The best indicator, or one of the top 2 or 3 best indicators, were if you strongly approved of Joe Biden. If you strongly approved of Joe Biden, you were most likely, I think, among all the demographics.
That's right.
To support the most authoritarian policies related to the unvaccinated. So there's a huge segment of society, of American society, that believes this is the right approach. And it's terrifying that those people believe that. And yeah, as Jim pointed out, I mean, if freedom isn't dead in the next 5 to 10 years, these polling results suggest in the next 20 or 30 years, I mean, unless we can get younger people to start thinking differently about these issues, our country isn't going to survive. It's not even going to want to survive in its current form.
Yeah, and again, if you guys want to check out the full results of this, we have the links in the show notes. You can dig down into some of the different crosstabs and find findings just like what Justin said about how the biggest demographic, the indicator that you're going to be in support of this stuff, is if you're a big fan of Joe Biden. So yeah, dig down into all of that. But I do have one other topic that I really want to get to.
Donnie, can I just do one more very quick comment on this? So I read chapter 1 of your and Justin and Glenn's book last night, and it opens up with a quote where Glenn Beck talks about question bravely, question boldly. Yeah. I think that today's generation is so unwilling to question the establishment, to question the status quo. And it's just really strange because not that long ago, even in the 60s, the entire youth counterculture movement was supposed to be about questioning the status quo. Right. And now, for some crazy reason, the youth are now a part of the status quo, and they just take it hook, line, and sinker. It's crazy.
No, it's a very, very solid point. But like I said, one more topic that I want to get to, and that is from our friends over at Project Veritas. So Project Veritas obtained and released new documents that support the lab leak theory. I put that in quotes, and confirms a ton of the stuff that we talked about when we covered the Glenn Beck's 2-hour-long special on the origins of COVID-19. Some of the documents include DARPA memos, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is underneath the Department of Defense. DARPA memos that reveal the unwillingness of the agency to fund COVID research in Wuhan because it's way too close to the definition of gain-of-function research. The memo also refers to the proposed research as being too dangerous. And as we know, the NIH under Fauci went ahead and funded that research through EcoHealth Alliance anyways. So Nate, you thought this was far more important than some of the topics that we had, that we were considering talking about on this podcast earlier in the week. I think you're right, but tell us why.
Well, I think if all these documents are proved to actually be legit, this is the story of the century. I mean, if these documents are true, this definitively proves that Fauci went ahead and funded gain-of-function research, which is currently banned in the United States because it is extremely dangerous. So even though DARPA, the government agency that handles our nuclear arsenal, said it was too dangerous, he went ahead and funded it through proxy through the Wuhan Lab of Virology in China, which was already cited for multiple safety violations in 2018. The virus then escaped and caused an international global pandemic that caused the deaths of millions of people. Meanwhile, the same man who is solely responsible for the gain-of-function research that led to this global pandemic is running the show and controlling the narrative of the pandemic in the United States. It's outrageous. Fauci has the blood of millions of people on his hands. Lied before Congress multiple times. I mean, that alone is a criminal offense.
Yeah, and maybe Chris, you could probably speak to this a little bit better than I can, because Fauci was in front of Congress again taking questions from Senator Rand Paul, and instead of answering any of those questions, he just starts talking about how Rand Paul's rhetoric is making people give Fauci death threats. So it's just like, don't look over here. Don't look over here. Let's just talk about this little thing. But what are your reaction when you were watching that?
Well, Dr. Fauci is a total narcissist, and he makes everything about himself. He even has gone so far as to claim that he is the embodiment of science, which is just like shocking when you really think about that. And all
amount
that
of ego that takes.
Yeah. And all that Rand Paul was trying to do was just try to get to the bottom of these questions that have been lingering now for years. And Dr. Fauci refuses to answer them, with a straight answer. And he always pivots to, well, you're just, personally attacking me. And then he even went so far to say that because Rand Paul has a link on his website that says Dr. Fauci should be fired, which I think most of the American people would probably agree with at this point, Dr. Fauci said that is the reason why he is receiving death threats. So, you can't even question Dr. Fauci and his healthcare, strategies without putting his life in danger. It is just the epitome of narcissism.
Yeah, I have a I wouldn't even say liberal family member in law, just suffers from a really bad case of Trump derangement syndrome, which just makes him hate anything that Republicans have anything to say about. And his reaction to some of this, because he's like one of the 5 remaining viewers of CNN, was that Rand Paul is trying to get Fauci murdered. That was his takeaway from all of this. So it's just like, the power of them being able to push these narratives into your general public shouldn't be poo-pooed, even when their audience has dropped off 90% since its height in the Trump years. They still have quite a sway. Jim, what's your input here? What do you want to say about this topic?
Well, I saw on Twitter this morning, there was the things that trend on Twitter are there on purpose, and Twitter controls it for the most part. I mean, there's some things can happen naturally, some things don't. But there was a fact check, factcheck.org, and it was about COVID, and it was how, despite the evidence that Senator Rand Paul has brought forward, that the NIH never did fund any gain of function research, that EcoHealth Alliance actually did not do. They may have done some work, and they may have funded some work at the Wuhan lab, but none of that has anything to do with COVID-19. Like, COVID-19 is completely separate from any of those sorts of allegations that are out there, which is absurd. But it is now being so we're all going to be in big trouble, because we're all questioning. We have a lot of questions about this COVID stuff, so we're all probably going to go to jail the next 2 years. But and Fauci can stand there and lie and get away with it, because the deep state exists. The deep state has protected him. There's a phalanx of deep staters around him to make sure that he does not get harmed by any of this. And of course, the corrupt corporate media that just do the work of the deep state and the Democratic Party will make sure that there aren't any consequences for what Fauci has done. He refuses to answer questions directly, simple questions that Senator Rand Paul presents to him, because he knows he doesn't have to. Is anyone going to call him to account besides Rand Paul and a couple other senators, or maybe a guy like Ted Cruz or something? No. Does Fauci think that those guys are any real threat to him? No, he doesn't. He's acting the way he's acting because he knows he's going to get away with it. And this is disgusting. And so, this DARPA stuff, I think it's really interesting. I want to see how it plays out, because I'm a curious person. I want to see how legit this stuff is, what the context of all this was. But we may not ever get that, because the deep state is going to, again, put a wall around the truth to make sure the American people stay in the dark.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane stuff, and I applaud all of the people, all the independent media that's actually pursuing this, whether it's Project Veritas or Glenn Beck with the Blaze and all of that, because if it wasn't for them, we would never hear about any of this stuff, because the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world could care less. In fact, they are incentivized to bury it because of their political leanings and all of that. But we are going to have to wrap it up here, folks. Justin, I'll give you time to talk at the very end here when I let you kind of outro yourself. But I will say thank you all for tuning into this episode of In the Tank podcast. If you're listening only, you're probably listening on a Friday. If you join us on Thursdays live, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, you can join in the conversation, send us your comments and questions. We'll probably respond to it if we have time or if it's good enough. If you want, you can subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. You can follow us on Twitter, socialist Twitter at In the Tank Pod. You could also send us your comments, questions, and concerns, anything like that. Email us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Justin Haskins, last words. Where can the fine people find you?
They can find me at Justin T. Haskins on Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Parler, all the various social media apps out there. And also, of course, buy the book, buy The Great Reset, Joe Biden and the Rise of 21st Century Fascism. Even if they don't have it in stock on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you want to buy your books, if you order it now, you'll be in line to get the next round of printing, which I've been told they're already working on. So order the book now. There's supply chain crisis and all this stuff going on, which is delaying everything. So if you're waiting for the book to become available, you might be waiting for a while. So pre-order it now, and you'll be able to get it hopefully within the next week or two. That's all I got.
Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me at J Lakely on Twitter, at Heartland Inst on Twitter. Always visit heartland.org. And if you act now, maybe Donnie will read you a bedtime story right from the book.
Right. That is right. Nate Myers, anything you want to pitch while we sign out here?
No, I'm good. I'm a ghost on social media.
That's right. Nate and Chris, you are ghosts on social media, so just join me in saying goodbye to the fine people.
Goodbye.
Have a great week, everybody.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.